I wanted to start off this movie madness analysis of The Truman Show with a quote from Christoph. We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. I don't know what's more frightening, the words because of how true that statement is, or is it so frightening because it came from a person who recognizes this and is exercising what he can do with that power. It's a well-known fact that we all can influence others, whether directly or indirectly. It's just the matter of how you implement your influence. Inevitably, people have taken it upon themselves to take advantage of the person or the consumer to gain something of value out of it. Now, Christoph, he's the director of The Truman Show, not to be confused with the actual director in our world, Peter Weir, and written by Andrew Nicole. The Truman Show is a satirical social science fiction drama comedy.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mount Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Over time, people have become the wiser of the tricks of the trade and will protest and unveil what's really going on behind the curtain to stop more potential people becoming the victim. John Carpenter directed the beloved sly satirical classic They Live, which is about a man who discovers that aliens live amongst us and are controlling the human race through the use of subliminal messages, which he can see when he puts on these special glasses that he found. I bring this up not to detract from the analysis itself, but to showcase the efforts people will go to inform everyone. The people I'm referring to is John Carpenter, by the way, and Peter Weir. Now going back, the efforts that people will actually go to inform everyone that we are being lied to and being subconsciously brainwashed into doing things which I believe if we were presented with the option openly and honestly, most would likely turn it down. The theme I wish to present is free will, and what happens when our free will is no longer ours to control, but someone else's.
What's he saying? Truman, he's lying!
Get out of here. Come on, bye.
Don't worry.
Directed by Peter Weir and written by Andrew Nicole, just repeating. Nicole, inspired by an episode called The Special Service from the Twilight Zone series, took it upon himself to write a story ahead of its time about a man whose life is in actual fact a reality TV show unbeknownst to him.
Well, you're on television.
I am?
Yes, 24 hours a day.
Good morning.
Morning!
Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Everything is swell, perfect yet so artificial. As if what you see is a live action cutout of a 1950s catalogue. It's supposed to be this perfect world. It's Christoph's perfect world. Everything just seems so forced, and what's interesting is that Truman himself has seemed to take on the similar characteristics of his home.
Your mother called. You really shouldn't upset her like that.
What did you want?
I made macaroni.
I'm not hungry.
You know, we really ought to throw out that mower. Get one of those new elk rotaries.
It's a beautifully woven, sick relationship where Truman himself has been influenced to fit in to his socially anatomical world, perfectly conducted by his co-stars, to keep Truman true and to keep him in the dark. Subsequently, controlling Truman's life for the sake of ratings and our entertainment. The immoral thing about this is how much Truman is berated on the show. He's supposed to be this real human being with raw emotions, no script, no cue cards. I mean, that's the show's whole selling point to the audience, but the negative hindsight is that people are boring. And another problem the studios have faced is they've watched Truman growing up. Truman ended up developing instinctual urges of wanting to leave Christoph's perfectly routine town to travel and see the world.
I like to be an explorer, like the great Magellan.
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
See, that sort of example is just so perfect. By the way, on rewatching this movie, I wondered why the studio decided to even tell Truman about our world. Why didn't they just say that Sea Haven was the only place on this small world, falsify his reality? Because going back to what Christoph has said, we accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It would have solved a few problems for them, I think. But I guess the director of this movie wanted to send the message to us that no matter what, our instincts, the director, Peter Weir, of this movie wanted to send a message to us that no matter what, our instincts will always make us want to travel and explore. That's what we are, and
I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
Also, now I think about it, as I'm writing this analysis, Christoph did establish right from the start, he did intend on making the perfect world, his perfect world, which means that his perfect world is influenced by our reality. So I guess because of his arrogance, he just wanted to throw everything out there and play God. It meant for taking existing things from our world and putting it into his world, but where he'll be the only one controlling the environment to his will to make what he determines what's perfect, which of course is his opinion. This guy thinks he's God. Talk about having a God complex. The sheer arrogance this guy has seemed to manifest itself has grown over time along with the show, but it's good to point out that I believe everyone can have the potential to end up like Christoph, if you're not careful. Losing our way. We are always searching for new and better things, creating the next best thing, and trying to get the most out of life. And if you feel unfulfilled, you will most likely certainly see yourself compensate for it and justify it by any means possible. Christoph is an artist at heart and has a definite passion for what he does. We're shown visually that he is this artist, this typical artist at heart, with his little cap on and his mannerisms, and it's just all really fun to watch. It's just like the icing on the cake. But there was certainly a line that he had eventually crossed at some point during his career, where he ended up in his life. He decided his goals outweighed what's right and what's wrong. What I mean by this is Peter Weir, the director of The Truman Show, along with Ed Harris is the actor who played Christoph, they wanted to give him a backstory. And the backstory seemed to being this out-of-work director, never really feeling fulfilled and always having this God complex. He may not have recognized it at first, but it was always brewing inside. And a lot of artists are always looking to control things and create their own world. That's what they do, they're creators. But going back to what I've written here, is he eventually had crossed a line at some point, it seemed, during his career, where he jumped at the chance of being the director of The Truman Show, before Truman was even born, and decided that his goals outweighed what's right and what's wrong. And he saw and jumped at that chance when The Truman Show was going to happen to fulfill his own selfish desires, wrapped in the excuse that he's blinded by, people are sick of phony actors.
It's all true.
That's his justification.
Real. Nothing here is fake. Nothing you see on this show is fake. It's merely controlled.
And he's managed to influence, and almost like a fever, he's managed to just link up everybody else with this sick world and have them even justify his own sick goals. It seems that I am picking on Ed Harris's character, but I'm just using Christoph as an example. Everyone on this show has ended up justifying the logic behind continuing on with the unethical show. So I guess the question should be, when is it time to reevaluate yourself and your desires as a person? And realize when to take responsibility, to learn to say no and back away. See something for what it truly is. Now, what I mean by that is seeing what The Truman Show really is. Like, I'm looking for an epiphany moment from anyone, the cast, anyone who worked on it, and Christoph himself. Like, does he really understand what he's doing? Has he been so blinded by him justifying it? Is he conflicted? Has he got his own worries about things? And I think during the movie we aren't given any of that, which I think it's safe to say that Christoph has just been engulfed by it. But we do eventually see later in the film, when death is knocking on its doorstep, that maybe we could pull back a bit. And it's good to really see that.
Keep going. He's gone.
Cut transmission! Cut transmission? Cut it!
You know, we really see the heart of it from people. Because we aren't shown Christoph having that empathy for Truman. Truman is actually supposed to be this, almost like his son, and he's supposed to love him. Yet we see later down in the track that he's actually willing to keep his control, even if it meant the death of Truman, even if it meant killing off his star. I mean, what was going to happen afterwards after he killed him? Well, yeah, short term, they'll get like huge ratings boosting and all that, as if they hadn't when he disappeared, and everybody was just all wondering, because it's like the first time that they've ever lost Truman on the show, and everybody was just watching and wondering what was going to happen. I get the feeling that Christoph is just kind of like, he's gone too far, he's crossed the line, and he's now just kind of embracing it. And what's become important to him now is not Truman, even though he'll say that, is what's become most important is his control, his need to feel in control of the Truman Show. He gets drunk with power.
Cue the sun.
Hell, Christoph is like this guy.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Give me some lightning.
Again.
Hit him again.
Tip him over.
Damn you, Victor!
No, you can't. His tide is up to the boat.
Shut up!
He's gonna drown. He doesn't even care.
Do it! Do it!
He's only a more socially accepted psychopath, because both people are trying to fulfill their desires. In the scene of The Silence of the Lambs, you know, the well is Truman's town, Sea Haven, and we're showing Christoph willing to go to great lengths to take away his victim, Truman, his victim's free will. And what's more sick is he's not just getting off on it.
Say something, goddammit. You're on television. You're live to the whole world.
He's getting paid a shitload of money, I can assume, but he's showcasing his work to the world. But he's not alone. The studio, the workers, the actors, and the people who watch the show have fallen prey into this sick trap. Peter Weir presents us. Peter Weir, remember, he's the director of The Truman Show, presents us with a good hard look at his characters when confronted with a choice and ourselves.
I'd like to say one thing. You're a liar and a manipulator, and what you've done to Truman is sick.
Well, we remember this voice, don't we?
The manipulation on Truman is so astonishing and tragic, yet I can't help but feel, from a human standpoint of view, is that I have that curiosity. I can't help but feel intrigued about wanting to know more about the other tactics and the strategies that the studio had used to push Truman back down to keep him in their grips. There's that lust for power everyone has. If you let it go and you don't control it, you will see the quote, "People are capable of great things in a whole different twisted light." They actually went as far as to giving Truman a phobia. An actual phobia. Now think about that. They gave Truman a phobia as he's growing up. Well, how they did this was by forcing him at a young age to watch his dad die right in front of him. Of course he didn't actually die, but to Truman he died. And to make it his fault for wanting to stay out into the water a little bit longer. All to orchestrate a way to control Truman and to prevent him from wanting to travel near water, to keep him contained on this island, on Christoph's little world. However, Christoph never really killed anyone on this show, unlike Buffalo Bill and Lex Luthor. But you get the point. But we do see Christoph heading down that path where at the end of the movie, like I said, that Christoph, we're shown that he is just drunk with power. He's afraid to lose that control over Truman. And Truman, he's a product to him. You know, he loves the product. He doesn't love the human himself. And we are shown at the end of the movie the lengths that Christoph will actually go to being that evil incarnate. To be someone who will go to great lengths to keep your world from crumbling. But I'm getting ahead of myself, Phil.
Listen to me, Truman.
It's hard to believe the amount of abuse, the emotional abuse, and I wanted to go back into during the movie, not to the end. The emotional abuse they are putting Truman through. Mind you, someone who they are supposed to love and adore. I mean, he is the star after all. They are so blinded by the prospect that the show has become more of a priority to keep himself contained, rather than realizing the sick, twisted nature, the actions people are following through on.
I know you better than you know yourself.
You never had a camera in my head.
Also, the studio's crew, who answer to the studios and Christoph, are just as horrible for enabling such a show's existence. Even the audience have a big part in this. I mean, his fake mum, his fake wife, who is just prostituting herself. That's what it is. Because we are shown later during the movie that there actually are talks about them having a baby, where in actual fact in the real world, her real world, she's actually married to somebody else and already has a family of her own. And she gets paid like a ton of money every time she has to sleep with Truman. Anything to keep the reality a reality, I guess. Even his so-called friend, his best friend, a person who Truman grew up on, are just so willing participants to this emotional abuse. The betrayal, the guilt trip the guilt trips that they all go to, that they are orchestrated by the behind the scenes. They throw at Truman to throw him off the trail.
The point is, I would gladly step in front of traffic for you, Truman.
And the last thing I'd ever do is lie to you.
And the last thing that I would ever do is lie to you.
It's just since doing this analysis, I've found this movie to be quite sad. I empathize deeply for Jim Carrey's character, Truman, because his whole life has been a lie. Anyway, I did enjoy this movie a lot. Peter Weir did a terrific job directing this movie, and I think making this movie part satirical made the movie that much more easier to watch. This has been a Movie Madness analysis. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've learnt something.